Hi, friends, and welcome to a very special episode of the Authentically You Network Podcast. I'm your host, Maleia Evans, and today we're stepping outside of our usual format for something deeply personal and incredibly important. Today is Melanoma Monday, a national day of awareness dedicated to understanding, preventing, and fighting the most serious form of skin cancer. And on this episode, I'm not bringing in a special guest. I am the guest. It is my story. For the first time in this podcast, I'm going to be sharing my own journey, my 10-year battle with melanoma. I'll talk about where it came from, how it began, what the fight has looked like, and what I've learned along the way. And just as important, I'm going to share some eye-opening statistics about how melanoma continues to affect people across the country and around the world. But before we dive in, I want to give you a quick heads up. If you are a regular at Authentically You Network Podcast, or if you're new and this is your first episode, this episode isn't coming to you from our usual studio with our amazing producer and our top tier equipment and our high powered internet strength. I'm recording this from home, just me, my computer camera, and the roller coaster that comes with having residential broadband and sketchy internet strength. So yes, there may be a few moments, brief moments, where the video quality dips below what you're used to from an Authentically You podcast episode. But I promise you the audio is clear throughout the entire episode. And more than anything, I hope that you'll tune in not for the production, but for the message itself. This episode is raw. It's real. It comes from a place of deep vulnerability for me, but it also comes from a place of hope, awareness, and purpose. If you or someone you love has ever been touched by melanoma, or if you think skin cancer could never happen to you, or if you've ever just thought, oh, it's just skin cancer, please listen to this episode. Please share this episode. This information could literally save a life someday. So join me now from the inside out for this heartfelt and special Melanoma Monday episode of Authentically You. I'll see you on the inside shortly. Hey, everyone. If you listened to that introduction, you've probably figured out by now that this episode of Authentically You Network Podcast is going to be quite different than the others. This is kind of a special episode, uniquely done from my home office, not from the studio, not with my producer. It's just me and Zoom and my computer and my camera. No fancy sound equipment either. So you get to hear my neighbor outdoors right now who decided to mow his yard precisely at the time that I decided to record the episode. There's probably going to be a car go by, a dog barking, kids laughing, playing that you may hear right outside of my window. So today's just a real and raw episode in more ways than one. So I would just ask you to show me some grace with this episode. And let's just dive right in, talking about what we're here to talk about today at Authentically You. Today is Melanoma Monday. Melanoma Monday is set aside the first Monday in May every year as a day to bring more awareness to melanoma, the number one killer of all skin cancers. But the message that I want to share with you today is my personal story. Many of you already know a lot about my personal story because you're my personal friends, you're my contacts, or you've heard me speak of my story at some other event, venue, or occasionally a blip of it here and there in other episodes on Authentically You. But many of you are new here and new to me and don't know at all about my melanoma journey. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'll tell you how it started and where we are now. But the first thing that I want to share with you are some stats, some real statistics put out by the Skin Cancer Foundation regarding current statistics of melanoma. melanoma is not just skin cancer. If there's anything I can impart on you today to take away from this episode, is to not ever say to someone who has had a skin cancer diagnosis, especially melanoma, that it's just skin cancer. It's just a spot on your skin. You can have that removed and all's good. In some cases, that is exactly true. You can have it removed and all is good. You never have another issue. That often is not the case. The majority of the time, not the case with melanoma. And such has been my case. Not the case with melanoma. My skin cancer was not just skin cancer. But let's look at some stats. I'm going to look away from the camera for a bit as I read some of these stats to you. One of the most alarming to me this year is that there will be 212,200 cases estimated to be diagnosed this year in 2025 with melanoma. 212,000. That's a lot. That's a lot of people that are going to get diagnosed with melanoma this year. Another alarming number is that of the diagnoses that have already happened, including some of those that will be diagnosed this year, is that 8,000, a little more than 8,000 people are going to die of melanoma this year. This episode is about changing those numbers. My story for 10 years in my journey with melanoma has been about changing those numbers. But the one statistic that I really kind of have lost sleep over the last couple of days, and that if I can just be real and honest with you, actually makes me angry. Makes me want to cry because I cry when I get angry, is this one. 5.9%. Round that up, 6%. 5.9%, nearly 6%. Estimated increase in the number of melanoma cases. So I already gave you the 212,000 number, but that number is a 5.9% increase in diagnoses. So, what really upsets me about that is that means we're not taking this whole melanoma thing serious. And that means that my story, friends who are still fighting or have fought and won, and especially the story of friends who have lost their battle and gone on home to be with the Lord. That means all of those stories are just not being taken serious. And I'm really sorry if I sound harsh and aggravated right now, but if I can be honest with you, I am, because that number means we're going in the wrong direction. We shouldn't be having any percent increase in diagnoses. We should have percent decreases in diagnoses each year if we're really taking the messaging that so many of us are trying to share about our stories to try to prevent you from being in one of those increased percentages. It's real, people. It's real. Melanoma is not just skin cancer. Let me tell you how mine has been. Mine started as a little bitty freckle that I got in 1986. Yes, in the 1900s. I got a sunburn as a college student doing a fundraiser for an organization that I was in college. One Saturday afternoon, a beautiful Saturday afternoon, I stood on concrete all day long for about 8, maybe 10 hours in 95 plus degree weather, young and dumb, and did not protect myself against sunburn that day. And I wore a tank top all day and ultimately ended up with some very severe sunburn on my shoulders. But after I survived the sunburn and healed from that, I had for 30 years the cutest little freckles on my shoulders because of that sunburn. And I never thought another thing about it. Never thought another thing about that sunburn after I healed from it. until fast forward from 1986 to 2014. Well, let's just say 2012, really. In 2012, one of those cute little freckles on my shoulder had grown and was now, over the course of several years, had grown and was now in 2012 a full blown mole, pretty much. But in 2012, I began to notice as I was dressing or, looking in the mirror, whatever, I began to notice that it was changing characteristics. It was getting larger, it was getting darker, it had lost its perfect circle shape. It was no longer asymmetrical. It was weird looking. It was, it was happening. But you know what? I was busy. I was a busy mom. I was busy climbing the career ladder. And at the time, ironically, my husband and I were actually the chairpersons of our local community's Relay for Life, a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, benefiting research of all cancers. I was busy and I was competitive. And so, as leaders of that particular fundraising event, I didn't have time to take care of myself, to stop what I was doing and go to the doctor to have this little mole seen about. It wasn't even registering with me that this mole could be anything. And here I was, the spokesperson at the time for a local community fundraiser related to cancer. I mean, how stupid could I have been to not stop long enough to take care of myself? So 2014 rolls around. And the mole at this point is out of control. It now is beginning to be bothersome in my clothing. It's beginning to be painful. And it at times, if I rubbed it the wrong way with a towel or something, it, could bleed or just give me problems. It was gross. Let's just say it was gross. Okay. And grossness finally got me to the doctor. Well, what you need to know about getting an appointment with a dermatologist is there are few of them in this nation. There aren't enough of them for you to be able to instantly get an appointment with. And the majority of dermatologists in the country do have a pretty lengthy wait list. And by lengthy, I mean, more than a month to get in to see a doctor, to get in to see that specialist. And so a friend of mine highly recommended a dermatologist that she visited frequently, for her checkups, her skin checkups. And let me say this, I had never been a person that did monthly regular skin checkups either. Skin cancer and melanoma was just not on my radar. Full disclosure, I was a tanning bed addict. My birthday is in January, and anybody that knows me knows what I wanted for my birthday was a gift certificate for tanning sessions, because I wanted to have beautiful bronze skin by the time the sun was shining in March every year. And so, I didn't tan every day, all day, every year. I tanned pretty much from January to March to get a good base tan, but then I was in the sun. I love the beach. And so sun was just something that was important to me, and tanned skin was important to me. And it especially got more important to me the older I got, as I gained weight and I wasn't young and cute and, cutesy anymore. Because ladies, I don't care what anybody says, tan fat is prettier than not tan fat. We all know that. Let's just all agree. But again, I wasn't caring for myself. I was doing all the things to make that little mole worse when I didn't even realize what that little mole actually was. So 2014, August 6th, 2014, I go to the dermatologist. He knew instantly. When he looked at it. He didn't tell me at the appointment that it's what it was, but he knew instantly what he was looking at, and he took it off and encouraged me, that he would be in touch in a few days and that he'd let me know. Never said a word about it being melanoma. I just said, let's get that thing off. Let's send that off. Let's check that out. And the whole time he knew that I was in big trouble. That I was in big trouble because it was melanoma, and it was not just skin cancer. It was a big enough melanoma and a deep enough melanoma that it was no longer just a mole on the surface of the shoulder. It was now a tumor growing from the mole down inside into my lymph nodes. It was full blown. Late stage 3, early stage 4 melanoma. Okay. I thought I was coming to have a troublesome little mole taken off and that'd be the end of it. No, it was just the beginning of a 10-year journey now. And not just that occurrence, but it has come back 2 times since. Most recently, just this past year in 2024. So in 2014, at that time, there was one treatment drug for melanoma, for my stage of melanoma. And the 5-year survival rate, the rate for surviving beyond 5 years at that time was alarmingly low for me. Alarmingly low. 46% was my chance at that time of survival beyond 5 years if I couldn't complete the treatment regimen of that one drug, which was the most horrific drug that anybody could be put through. It was horrible, and many people didn't make it through a full 1-year treatment plan with that drug because the side effects of the drug were so bad. And I fell into that statistic. I could not physically make it through the whole year. So you remember I just said 46% was that survival rate beyond 5 years. So here I was, a mom. My daughter was in college. I didn't have any grandchildren yet. I was a wife. I was climbing the career ladder. And I wasn't ready to be staring in the face of such kind of alarming statistics over a mole that had I gone to the doctor as that thing started taking shape, and especially as I was the chairperson of a Relay for Life and should have known better than to be too busy to take care of myself. It was a hard reckoning, to deal with. So had it removed, didn't survive the first year of treatment, had to quit the treatment, and then just rolled the dice at that point. Going, every year for checkups. I think I was going every 6 months at that time for checkups. And then finally decided, once a year is going to be fine. I'll just keep a watch on myself. I'll do my dermatology visits every 6 months faithfully. And if he finds something, he'll take them off and we'll deal with it, so be it. Fast forward to 2018. I began just not feeling well, just weird things, chronic fatigue, some muscle cramps, just some different things. Ladies especially, when something's not right in your body, it. You know your body better than anybody else, and when something's just not right. And it's not just I'm tired or, I just got over this little bug or whatever. It's no, something just wasn't right. And on a Wednesday evening in Bible study at church, in early December 2018, something just felt weird inside my turtleneck because it's cold outside. And so I stuck my hand into my collar to just kind of rub my neck. And when I did, there it was. Just plain as day, put my hand right on it. A very big knot that was right here in the same area where the original melanoma was. So I immediately got an appointment with my oncologist. He very quickly got me in for an MRI, and there it was. Yes, it was another big tumor. We biopsied it. Yes, it was recurrence of melanoma. Here we go again. here we go again. But this time it was internal, not on the outside. Um, and no telling at this point how deep this one was that had to be removed. So do the surgery again to remove it, send it off again for biopsy to get the staging of what level it was. And again, it was another late stage 3. So here we go again. But this time there was not just one, there were 2 additional new drugs. And that original killer drug from back in 2014 wasn't even an option anymore. So there were these 2 new drugs that were producing fantastic results and really increasing the survival rate. Much less invasive in side effects, still a year long to have to do the treatments, but I did it. I was able to do the treatments. There were some side effects, some tough side effects, but there were some treatment plans to kind of counter those side effects that help. Physical therapy during one of the worst stages was huge for me. And so I can tell you, as a melanoma patient, I know of numbers of patients, including myself, that struggled with muscle cramps, severe muscle cramps and neuropathy, and lots of edema. Physical therapy for that was a game changer. Totally turned it around for me, and made the rest of the year just much more bearable. So had a year of that, which ended in March of 2020. Now, if any of you remember what we all went through in 2020, there was this thing called a pandemic. And so, having to go through a threatening disease that's trying to kill you at the same time as this virus that all of a sudden develops that's literally is killing people, and trying to stay on track with being able to get your treatments so that, hoping and praying that your cancer center doesn't have to shut down. All of these new protocols for masking and safety, and it was just nuts. It was nuts. So that was part of my story as well, was dealing with COVID and melanoma at the same time. So thank God, I really honestly believe to this day that my cancer treatments, because my treatments were not chemotherapy, they were immunotherapy, which is a treatment that it heightens your immune system to help your immune system fight the bad that's in your body. So I really honestly think, I haven't done a study. I'm not a doctor. I just think, because I was surrounded by COVID, so many people that had it, and I never got it during that initial year of COVID. I never got COVID, not once, never got sick or tested positive with COVID during all that time. And I really believe it's because my treatments helped my immune system fight that off. I don't know. I'm no doctor. I'm no scientist. It's just me, just my guess. So anyway, we survived round 2 and life was going great. I was doing my regular checkups with my oncologist, with my dermatologist, and really hoping to get, right to that 5-year mark so that I could start using the word remission. That wasn't God's plan. It wasn't God's plan. Just 2 short years later, in 2021, it happened again. But this time, it was headaches, dizziness, brain fog, some other symptoms digestively, just lots of stuff, lots of weird stuff going on. And this time, not just 1, but 2 new little nodules popping up right in the same place as the others. This left side, left shoulder, left neck area. So immediately, run to the oncologist, get the appointment, get checkup, get all the scans, whatever, get them again. And again, it did appear that we were going down the road yet a 3rd time. So this time my husband and I decided that as much as we loved my oncologist, and I still see that oncologist to this day, I maintain a relationship with him and visit him every 6 months. But this time we decided that maybe we needed to go where all they do is melanoma. My oncologist, my local oncologist, knows a good bit about a lot of cancers, but I wanted a doctor that knew everything there was to know about the one cancer, which was melanoma. And so we were fortunate, was very blessed. I'm very blessed to have good insurance and have the ability to be taken in as a patient at the MD Anderson Melanoma and Skin Cancer Institute with my doctor, Dr. Isabella Glitza, who has become not only my lifesaver in the past few years, but a friend that I value her insight and her investment in time and energy that she puts into her patients. And so kudos to Dr. Glitza and MD Anderson, who are not, by the way, disclaimer, there's no sponsorship of either of those in this podcast. There's zero sponsorship in this podcast. This is just my story sharing with you today because it's Melanoma Monday. So meeting with Dr. Glitza, we deal with those 2 nodules and have been dealing with keeping melanoma at bay ever since. And so visits to her every 3 months, biopsying sketchy spots that come up on the scans. Fortunately, everything so far up to October of last year had turned out fine, except for this one little crazy spot on my spleen. And that's something I should back up and tell you, is that after melanoma has broken the dermis, the skin level, and is now internal, you are at risk for melanoma spreading to your organs. That was the alarming factor about that May of 2021 episode when I started having headaches and brain fog and all that, is that one of the frequent places that melanoma will spread is to the brain. It will spread lots of places, but lungs, predominantly lungs and brain, sometimes kidneys, but it's in there and it will go wherever it wants to go when it gets up and active. And so it's extremely important that if you've ever been diagnosed with melanoma, regardless of the stage, that you continue getting your annual checkups. And if it's annual, twice a year, quarterly, whatever your doctor tells you, you need to get those checkups and those scans and stay on top of it. And so that's where we were. And this pesky little spleen spot kept causing some problems and kept showing up and kept getting larger scan after scan. And so fast forward to last October, I finally agreed to living a life without a spleen, which is a scary thing for me at first because, read lots of things about it, talked to some people, that had been through it, and life without a spleen is just a little bit different. You can do some things, you shouldn't do some other things. You definitely don't need to get sick, period, because you just don't fight off things as well without a spleen. So lost the spleen, and in the biopsy of the spleen, it in fact was a malignancy. It had been a spread of the melanoma, which is very rare, we found out, for melanoma to spread to the spleen. And so survived the surgery, survived the recovery, and now we're in that maintaining mode again, just going every 6 months for the scans, the blood work. And so that was a really long way for me to share with you, to tell you melanoma is not just skin cancer. Don't ever say to someone, oh, it's just skin cancer, because there really can't be anything more hurtful that you could say to a melanoma patient than to minimize what they're going through. Now, I'm not asking for your sympathy, for your pity. I've survived it. I've been through it. I've walked through it, and I've been very open, about my story with it along the way, to anyone who wants to listen. But I can tell you, hands down, a walk through melanoma, or any type of cancer for that matter, is much more doable if you know the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior. Let me just make that disclaimer right up front. My entire journey I would have never made it through any of it had I not relied on strength that God could give me, had I not been grateful and thankful and praise Him for the blessings along the way that He gave me. And there are so many. You just have to be so mindful to stay focused on the things that are going right in the midst of the things that are going wrong. And it's hard to do. There were days that I was much better at it than others, especially during the surgery. The surgery was hard. Some things happened that, wasn't expected. My recovery was much longer from the surgery, and there were some dark days in that hospital, where I just really doubted that God was even there and that He even cared. And I was so wrong. I was so wrong, because every time that I thought thoughts like that, He was literally sitting right on the edge of the bed with me, just shaking His head, thinking, "Oh, child, oh, child, how wrong can you be?" I encourage you to surround yourself with people who love the Lord. If you don't already love the Lord and have a relationship, I encourage you to reach out to me or to someone you know that does, because you're just one sunburn. You're just one little freckle away from walking down the same journey that I've walked down, or even worse, your outcome being that of so many of my friends whose outcome is so very different from mine that they're no longer here to be able to tell you their story. I don't know why. Not once, not twice, but 3 times God has allowed me to survive melanoma. And I don't know how many more times He'll let me survive it. Hopefully He'll not make me have to go through it again. But if I do, my story is going to be the same every time. My story every May is going to be here to tell you what I walked through, what's been different since the last time I told you, and to bring you this year's stats. And back to the beginning of this episode where I shared with you that this year the stats are showing that there's a near 6% increase in the number of new diagnoses this year, means that you aren't listening. You guys just not listening. And that hurts my feelings. It hurts my feelings because I don't want my story to not matter. I'm selfish about that. I don't want what I've walked through and you seeing what it has put me through to not matter to you. I want my story to help prevent it from happening to you. So I have what I call my personal take on what I call the 4 things that are most important: preventing, surviving, overcoming, making it through a melanoma diagnosis. And I call that protect, detect, respect, and effect. Protect your skin. Protect your children's skin. Whatever you do, protect your children's skin. They don't have a choice in whether they end up with melanoma as a child if you, the parent, aren't being responsible and taking care of their skin. Does that mean 100% SPF and rash guard long sleeve swimsuits at the beach? Well, that would be my preference for you, of course, because that's just the smartest thing to do. But at least some type of strong SPF and reapplying it frequently. Ball caps, sunglasses, because hey, guess what? Melanoma also gets in your eyes. Yep. Melanoma can also happen in your eyes. Protect your skin. It is the very least thing that you can do. And then secondly, detect. Early detection. How is that done? By monthly skin scans yourself. While you're showering, check your own skin. If you're married, ask your partner, your spouse, to check all over your body for you for spots that you can't see easily. You're looking for moles that are turning dark or changing color at all from how it was the last time you were checked. You're looking for spots that used to be perfect circle that are no longer a circle. They're getting kind of little weird shapes. You're looking for lots of different things, but mostly it's symmetry. You're looking for asymmetry. You're looking for discoloration, size. If something's growing, if a spot is growing, and it's also those other things. Detect. You detect by skin checks yourself and getting an appointment with a dermatologist. You have absolutely nothing to lose but a copay by going to see a dermatologist that you end up not having to have anything removed. That is wonderful. That is a great investment in yourself. Spend that copay, get that dermatologist appointment, get yourself a relationship with a dermatologist. So find yourself a good dermatologist. Protect, detect, respect. Respect yourself and your loved ones enough to take care of yourself, to take it serious. Respect those that are walking through it enough to understand that it's a tough journey and that it's not just skin cancer. And then the last one is effect. Make sure your story has a positive effect on people. I want my story to do two things: to reduce that number. I want the increased number going the other way. I want it to be a decreased number every year, because this messaging is getting out there of how important protecting and detecting is for fighting against skin cancers, particularly melanoma. But the second thing is, I want my story to point people to Christ. Because ultimately, here's how I feel about melanoma. And if it is what takes me out someday, I win either way. You know why? Because dead or alive with melanoma, my salvation is in the Lord Jesus Christ. And when I leave this earth with a melanoma-filled body, it will be fully healed, and I will live in eternity with the Lord. I don't worry about dying from melanoma. I really don't worry about dying in a car wreck. I don't worry about how my time on this earth will end someday, because it will. It's going to for all of us. I just worry only that when I leave here, in whatever way God plans, that I will live with him in eternity. And I want that for you too. I want your skin to be clear of any disease, and I want your hope and your faith and your eternity to be in the Lord. Thank you for sitting through this episode with me today. Thank you for hearing my story. Thank you for hearing me fuss at you for not listening to me so far. And I just pray that as summer approaches and that we're all getting back outside and mowing our yards and going to ball games and going to the beach and doing all the things in the sun, that you will take this seriously and that you will protect your skin. You will get early detection for anything you might have already going on, that you will respect yourself and people who are walking the cancer journey, and that you will have a positive effect, either as a non-melanoma patient by simply sharing my story and the story of others and the importance of this messaging, or that you will have an effect by helping point people to Christ as they are walking through a journey and they feel lost in that journey. I love you all. Thank you so much for sitting through this episode, this very different and raw episode of Authentically You. And I look forward to being back here with you again soon with a guest. And we'll talk about some other less hard things. But Melanoma Monday, wear black for the melanoma patients in your life. And let's not forget those caregivers. Before we close, I just can't say enough about the caregiver. How someone walks through any kind of cancer journey, no matter what it is, how someone goes through that without a caregiver, I just don't know. I mean, kudos to the ones that ever have. The caregivers are so critically important to the patient and to the healing from the disease, the cure of the disease. Melanoma for sure, is not a me disease. It is a we disease, because it does not just impact the person that it's happening to. And that's any cancer. That is not just melanoma. Cancer is not a me disease for the patient. It is a we disease for the entire family. Keep that in mind. Love on your caregivers as well. Thanks again. This concludes this episode of Authentically You, and I look forward to seeing you back on the inside for another episode. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed that conversation. Be sure to hop over to authenticallyyoutn.com and subscribe to our email list to become an Authentically You insider. That's how you'll know when new releases of other episodes have dropped to our platforms and all other exciting news that we'll have to share about networking events, live recording episodes, and all kinds of fun things. Thank you for spending your time with us. I'm Maleia Evans, your host of Authentically You. Have a great day.